Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Kieran, how are you this morning?
All is good, all is good. Still recovering from sing-along-a-rick at the Royal Albert Hall on Thursday night. What magnificent hair that man has for a bloke of 57.
Hasn't he just?
Oh, yeah. My word, I'd like some of those jeans.
Yeah. Jeans? Which jeans? The jeans he was... I wasn't impressed with the jeans he wore on Strictly last week, I had to say. He's a lovely man, and it's a beautiful venue as well, isn't it?
It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
I think the last band I saw there was Killing Joke. So as you can imagine, it was quite a contrast.
How did Killing Joke allow themselves to agree to do the Albert Hall? Really?
It's on everybody's wish list. You talk to anybody, you know plenty more people than I do, but it must be such a feather in the cap.
Not Killing Joke, Kieran. Not Killing Joke 40 years ago. As you can probably tell, Kieran, I'm quite chipper. We're recording this on Sunday morning, and I'm quite chipper because I've decided, the flower arranging news has rocked my hard man image, Kieran. My South London hard man image has taken a battering. So I thought I might as well go full in and tell you that I can't drive. I don't like cars. I have no interest in engines, which really annoys Ali. But I love looking at old cars. So I got myself up early this morning, Kieran, and the London to Brighton vintage car rally goes down the end of my road. So I had a very happy hour watching the old cars, the veterans, go from London to Brighton until it suddenly occurred to me, Kieran, that London to Brighton vintage could easily describe us.
Yes. Harsh but fair.
And I got slightly disheartened. But no, I love watching those little cars pootle by. Because I've decided from now on, Kieran, that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to pootle through the rest of life. Enough hanging, bit of flower arranging, bit of pootling. And it's Questions Day, Kieran. We do have a couple of news stories. And our first news story, Kieran, involves this pod.
Yes, well, I'm honoured, delighted to be. We've been nominated for the Best Podcast Award by the Football Supporters Association. I suspect, and there's congratulations to everybody else in all the categories, and also the podcast. There's some fine competition there. I suspect we're the only podcast that wants to never have to do a podcast again, because we've increasingly realised that 80% at least of our stories tend to be bad news stories, and therefore we're quite looking forward to closing down. But with so many scamps and scallywags in the industry, I suspect we've probably got a week or two's materials left, the very very minimum.
Yeah, I saw this is going to immediately contradict my pootling through life theory, because I saw your tweet saying congratulations to the other nominees. My theory is stuff the other nominees, Kieran. Right? Just for once, my mantelpiece needs updating badly. I can't keep putting pictures of Smudge up there. I need a trophy, Kieran. I understand people can vote for us, Kieran. Is that right? Is that how it works?
That's right. If you go to the FSA website, there's a link there, and you can vote for a broad range of categories, of which the most important, as far as we're concerned, is Podcast of the Year.
Yeah. Oh yeah, don't vote in any other category. Let's just vote in that category and vote for us. And actually, we should come up with some sort of Gianni Infantino style inducement, Kieran, shouldn't we? We'll tell them the full Lawrence Bassini story. How's that? Proper news.
I think that could get us closed down before the awards, actually.
Oh no, we'll do it after the awards, Kieran. Right. We'll go out with a bang. That'll be the picture they show on the front page of the Guardian. we'll as we're coming out of court, we'll be brandishing the trophy. We did say, Kieran, William Storey said that he would come on the pod, and we said that would only be a good thing if he actually had bought Reading. Otherwise, he's just, as we said, a ZZ Top lookalike. But it looks like he won't be coming on the pod anytime soon, Kieran.
Yes, I think it's fair to say I had one or two reservations with regard to William.
That's one way of putting it, Your Honour.
We're on speaking terms, or we're on tweeting terms at present, which is good. He said that following an accountant's review from his investment team, he's decided to not carry on with the potential investment in Reading. He'd also posted, I think, 24 hours earlier to that, when there was talk about Mike Ashley potentially getting involved in Reading. He sent a 2-word tweet: binding agreement.
Oh,
and everybody that started the rats are running. Then followed, I think it's fairly, and I was trying to work out the cryptic clue in this one. William has had somebody film him do some keepy uppies. Then he dribbled past a 12-year-old and shot and hit the bar in a 5-a-side course. And I'm going, I can normally decode things. Yeah, my social skills aren't great, but I can normally sort of try and decode things. And trying to work out what he meant from that was very difficult. But if he's still got it, to dribble past 12-year-olds at his age, then fair play to him.
Dribble past terrified 12-year-olds, Kieran. I think
Yes.
you should point out. I don't know where they got them from, but the sight of a large man with a very long beard, they must have said, he looks like Father Christmas. Oh, great. And you mentioned the accountant's review, Kieran. I suspect the accountant's review probably came up with the notion that he didn't have as much money as he thought he did to buy the club. So I can't help thinking that Reading have dodged a bullet there, Kieran. But, let's hope that the stories about Mike Ashley are true, because it would be lovely to take Reading off our list, Kieran. But something that's staying on our list for the moment is the Independent Football Regulator, as proposed by your best friend. And it looks like it is going to be put into law, Kieran.
Yes, if we take a look at some of the government's websites, the King's Speech is due to take place on Tuesday, and the Independent Regulator does appear to be forming part of that with regards to the contents. I think what's equally intriguing is that there is a job being advertised. It looks like it's an internal one, but this was found by one of the journalists, that there is a sort of an interim shadow head of the Independent Regulator, with that job due to start on the 1st of January 2024. And the aim, my understanding, is from senior sources. Can we use that phrase now without it sounding too pretentious?
Yes, of course. We're nominated podcast, Kieran.
Absolutely. Senior sources, which means a bloke I met down the pub, of course. And I was at one of these panels a few days ago, and it did come up. The aim is that they want the coast to be as clear as possible when the legislation comes through Parliament, so that as soon as the legislation is passed, then the aim of appointing a chief executive and a chair of the regulator, that can go full steam ahead, and we can have a regulator in place, because unfortunately we are too busy. This show's supposed to be 20 minutes a week, and it's 2 or 3 times that. We've still got the issue of the Premier League, which is taking the triple D approach to the regulator of delay, discredit, and divert, which is sort of classic guerrilla tactics as far as public relations is concerned. And I think with having a shadow regulator in place, that will give those people involved in drawing up the legislation, that'll give them a stronger position. And also, once the legislation is passed, we can then move ahead. And I think it's disappointing that the Premier League's still taking this rather arsey approach, because I look at the regulations and it doesn't really affect those clubs. Okay, you won't be allowed to join the Super League unless you want to leave English football. And if that's what you want to do, well, that's your choice. But other than that, it's not particularly restrictive. And I think the only other issue has been the distribution of money between the Premier League and the EFL. And all I would say is that without the threat of a regulator, we wouldn't be anywhere near close to a deal. And the proposals, which still have some way to work on both sides.
My takeaway from that, Kieran, is you wouldn't want to be starting a job on January the 1st, would you? That's January the 1st is a day for slumping in front of the Sound of Music because you're too hungover to reach the remote control for the telly, let alone starting a high-profile job. Questions, Kieran. Oddly enough, one of our questions is about the Super League, and it's a very interesting question as well. But before we get to that, we have a question from Sean Ford. Hello, Sean. Sean says, I'm constantly reminded by the pod how successful the Premier League is. Teams are able to recruit the best talent, pay the biggest wages, make the most money from telly, have big overseas fan bases, and regularly dominate the latter stages of most European competitions. But does this make us the bad guys? Is there anything the global governing bodies of football could be doing to make elite sport more equitable? And most importantly, can you ever see a world where the Premier League would allow this to happen?
I wouldn't say the Premier League is the bad guys. I think the Premier League is the organisation that got the right decisions made the right decisions at the right time, and is now reaping the rewards. It very much invested in trying to attract an overseas audience, whereas La Liga, Bundesliga, Serie A were a bit sniffy towards it, and overseas viewers have a limited amount of time available, as we do. How often do you watch German football, or Italian football these days, given the amount of attention or the amount of Premier League matches that we can see? So I think the Premier League is very successful, and deservedly so. The matches are all sold out as well. The average attendance isn't quite as high as that of Germany, but that's more to do with supply side issues, in the sense that the stadiums. We could have, if we had more 40 and 45,000 seater stadiums, we would overtake Germany, given the ticket sales are so good. Is there anything the global governing bodies of football could to make elite sport more equitable? Yes, what they could do is that they could set up a Super League or a European competition and ban English clubs from participation. And therefore, what would the result of that be? You still have Real Madrid and Barcelona and Bayern and the other the big Italian clubs and so on, and we'll be revisiting this topic, as you rightly said, a little bit later. The global governing bodies of football, FIFA doesn't really want to get involved in club competitions, with the exception of the FIFA Club World Cup, which is kicking in 2025. So I don't think FIFA would. UEFA, part of the success of the Champions League is that it features Premier League clubs, which themselves have huge followings. So even if an alternative competition was set up which excluded English clubs, I'm not sure the viewing figures would be as great, because people in this country wouldn't watch, because we are quite parochial. So could I ever see a world where the Premier League would allow this to happen? No, nobody gives up competitive advantage willingly, as we've just been referring to in relation to the King's Speech. The Premier League does not want to give up power and money, and those are the two driving forces of corporate behaviour.
Let's revisit it now, Kieran, if you can revisit something after 3 seconds. And this is a very interesting question, I think, from David Watson. And David Watson is a Rangers fan. David Watson says, there seems to be an increasing view that the European Super League will go ahead, but as a rival to the English Premier League. How realistic do you think an invite is for Rangers to join? Logically, if no English teams participate, there is a need to ensure British interest in the competition to maximise the value of the European Super League's UK TV deal. Whilst I disagree with the European Super League concept, since 1992, the commercialisation of European football has only ever been in ways that harm us as a large club in a small country. I just don't see that we could snub such an opportunity. I think that's a very interesting question, Kieran, and I'm particularly drawn to the first part. I was talking to some friends about this the other day. I agree with you. You've always said the European Super League will go ahead because the richest clubs in Europe want it to happen. But increasingly, it occurs to me that it will be a European Super League that doesn't have English teams in it.
Yes, and if it does go ahead under those circumstances, what will be the response of Premier League owners? Because let's face it, Fenway Sports Group, the Glazers, Stan Kroenke and co, they will follow the money. So, worst case scenario, Manchester United relocates to Dublin, and so on. You could see a potential for these clubs not wanting to be part of the Premier League if the Super League becomes more financially beneficial. What they actually want to do, of course, is to have their cake and eat it, which was the proposals of both the Super League and Big Picture. So could it happen? Possibly. The noises we get from German football, certainly German football fans. I don't know whether you saw some of the banners that were created by German fans on Saturday. They are they're quite a feisty bunch.
They are indeed,
and I'm not sure that they'd want it because actually, if you support Dortmund or Bayern Munich or the Kaiserslautern or whoever it's going to be, they love coming to England. They want to see their teams play Manchester United and Liverpool and Chelsea and so on. So you're denying fans the opportunity to contribute to that. With David's second part of the question, how realistic do you think an invite is there for Rangers? I spoke to one of our lawyer friends here, and he said it depends, which comes as a huge shock. My concern is if we take a look at the latest manifestation of the Super League. Now, for people not aware, there's an organisation called A22. A22 is it claims to be an independent consultants. But if you go to Barcelona's website, which of course, being a nosy little toe rag is what I've done, it makes reference to A22 were the organisation given the job of marketing and organising the Super League. So an A22, an interesting Twitter account to follow because they put out a lot of things saying European football needs a revamp, and we've got this fantastic proposal. And of course, as soon as you go into the details of their fantastic proposal, the European Super League in its new manifestation would probably involve 3 or 4 divisions. So there would be promotion and relegation. So could Rangers be asked to join it? Yes, they could, and Celtic as well. Let's be honest with you. Celtic, I know Rangers fans don't want to hear this, but Rangers are a wee bit behind Celtic, both on and off the pitch in terms of where they stand at present. So Rangers and Celtic potentially could both be invited to join it. If it's going to be 4 divisions of 12 clubs, how would Rangers feel if they end up in Division 2 or 3? Because and they're not going to like to hear this. The chances are they're not going to be able to compete with Barcelona and Bayern Munich and PSG and Juventus and other clubs, and even some of the smaller countries or the more mid-sized countries in Europe, the likes of Belgium and Portugal and so on, and the Netherlands. They do reasonably well in the Champions League. So if the Super League is non-England based and 3 divisions or 4 divisions of 12, I think it would be beneficial to the competition to have Rangers and Celtic. But I don't think, they're used to being top dog. Let's face it, if in Scotland, if you're a Rangers or Celtic fan, finishing as runners-up in the Scottish Premiership is seen as failure.
Yeah.
So how would they feel about finishing 7th in the 2nd or 3rd division of this competition?
Yeah, see, it strikes me, Kieran, that it's the very success of the Premier League, particularly commercially, that will eventually make a European Super League inevitable because, those clubs in Spain, France and Italy are surely coming to realise that they will never be able to compete in terms of a broadcasting deal with the Premier League. So they might as well throw the dice and set up their own Super League, and they may make some extra money that way.
Yes. Barcelona and Real Madrid are both money-making machines. They're not very good at controlling costs, especially Barcelona, as we've discussed on regular occasions. I think the big issue is for the mid-tier Spanish teams, the likes of Betis, Valencia, and so on, who they cannot compete even with clubs at the bottom of the Premier League, such as the success of the Premier League TV deal. So you can understand those clubs in particular are somewhat narky when seeing a talent drain. It doesn't stop them from winning competitions. They tend to be quite successful in both the conference and the Europa League. But there is no doubt we've seen with regards to the latest values of the Italian and the French TV deals, they're going nowhere. Whereas the Premier League it certainly has growth internationally, and it looks as if the packages which are going to be made available to broadcasters from 2025 onwards, there'll probably be an uptick in terms of those values as well. And remember, those values are already substantially higher than those of the rest of Europe.
Question now from Robert Hutchinson. And Robert says, how do you think National League clubs spending millions trying to buy their way into the Football League would be judged if they were covered by financial fair play regulations?
Yeah, I think this is a corker from Robert. Stockport County were promoted to the EFL, and their final season in the National League, they lost £90,000 a week. And this is for a club in the 5th tier. Now, as somebody that used to live in Stockport and used to go to Edgeley Park on a Friday night, I'm absolutely delighted that Stockport are back in the EFL, and they're having a cracking season as well. And they've got a new owner, a local owner, put a lot of money into the club. But would they be able to comply with the rules of the EFL if they've been in the Championship? The answer would probably have been yes, because under the EF rules, there is a wage cap. You're not allowed to spend more than 50% of your income on wages in League 2. But for every £100 put in by owners in the form of shares, you're allowed to increase your wage bill by £100. This is called football fortune. So an awful lot of money which has come in to the likes of Wrexham and Stockport and Notts County and Salford City, who have all been promoted in recent years, that money has come in the form of football fortune. So therefore, in my view, those clubs would have been and will continue to be compliant with the rules. And people say, well, the rules aren't fair. And there's the EFL is coming in for a lot of criticism from some clubs. And we're big friends with Trevor Birch and some of his team as well. We've met them on occasion. They've always been very fair in what they've said. What people seem to forget is that the EFL does not make the rules. The EFL is effectively sort of the civil service in terms of they apply the rules, and the rules are actually voted for by the clubs themselves. So if people are unhappy with the nature of the owners and directors test or the financial fair play rules, then they really should be sort of pointing the finger at the owners of the clubs that they support, because it's those owners that make those rules. And those owners make those rules because it's driven by self-interest. Why create a high hurdle in respect of buying a football club if you're a football club owner? Because you and I both know that probably half the clubs in EFL are up for sale, either being advertised, or they'll accept a knock on the door and come in and have a conversation. So why create a high hurdle? Because it will make it more difficult for you to sell your club, and therefore it will automatically restrict the pool of people who are interested in buying the club, which will have an impact upon the sales price as well.
Our next question, Kieran, comes from Chris Proctor, but it could just as easily have come from Kevin Day. As Chris Proctor says, what is the point of a loan deal with an obligation to buy? Why don't clubs just buy the player straight away if they're then obliged to buy the player anyway once the loan agreement is finished? Is this arrangement more beneficial for one of the buying or selling clubs, or is this the equivalent of a Klarna-type buy now, pay later service when the buying club think they should have some money by the summer?
Right. I think there's a little bit of a misconception with regards to obligation to buy, because people assume that that obligation is unequivocal, whereas from my understanding of the circumstances is that the obligation is triggered by a specific event. So if we take the case of Anthony Knockaert, he went on. He was loaned by Brighton to Fulham when Fulham were in the Championship on an obligation to buy deal, but the obligation only kicked in if Fulham were promoted. So there has to be an obligating event, which I think is sort of the legal, certainly the accounting terminology that we'd use. And the obligating event would be has such as, so it could be that if the player plays 30 games in the season, then you have to buy him at the end of the season, or if the club is promoted, or such and such. So it's not a concrete guarantee that the player will be bought. It's this will happen if these following circumstances have been achieved. The benefit for the selling club is that they are guaranteed a loan fee in respect of the player who's probably, for whatever reason, isn't in the manager's plans. The player gets an opportunity to play football and put themselves into the shop window, and the buying club or the potential buying club gets the talent. So, and it could work out that it's cheaper to play a loan fee and then buy the player, and when you then got to amortise him in season number 2, than if you bought him straight away. So there are benefits to all three parties, but the obligation, it's not a case of, it's not a deferred guaranteed buy. There has to be a criteria through which the obligation will kick in.
Well, Chris Proctor, I hope it's some consolation for you to learn that you were acting under a misconception, to realise that I was acting under the same misconception. So now we know. I'm a bit sinister, Kieran, is the only word I could use for the phrase obligating event. It sounds like something you'd take the cat for. I'm sorry about this, Smuds, but we're going to the vet for an obligating event. John Swift has our next question. It's quite a long question, Kieran, but listeners need to stick with it because I think it's an important one, and it's a topical one, I believe, as well. John Swift says, after watching Netflix's FIFA Uncovered documentary, it seems to me that the root of a lot of FIFA's corruption stems from the one country, one vote system. It seems far too easy to offer bribes and benefits to secure the votes of small countries that have outsized power relative to their size and football ranking. My proposal would be to reform the one country, one vote system to one where any measure would have to receive both half the votes of all the member unions, but would also require that any measure have the support of enough unions that represent greater than 50% of the world's population. To me, this would seem to prevent the likes of Jack Warner, who held outsized influence and became extraordinarily corrupt due to his control over the votes for small island nations in the Caribbean. Do you think this would work and would lead to less corruption and backroom deals? I mean, it seems to me on the face of it, Kieran, that would be a little harsh. That each country should have a vote, no matter how big they are in any system. But there's no denying that we need a solution to what is clear is endemic corruption in FIFA. There's a really interesting article in The Observer this weekend, Kieran, about Gianni Infantino and FIFA's relationship with Saudi Arabia, which I'm not suggesting for one moment is linked to corruption. But let's say that the current system is open to manipulation.
It is. All systems are open to manipulation. I'm minded to recall the Not the 9 o'clock news sketch where Mel Smith was a trade union chief exec, chair, and they had 6 trade unions all about to vote together. And because he had more members in his trade union, 5 people voted against him, and he said, motion carried. Yeah. Now, if we then apply this to FIFA, India and China together have got a pretty significant proportion of the world's population. Between them, they have qualified for one FIFA World Cup, and between them, they have won 0 games in FIFA World Cup finals. So that intuitively to me would seem a bit strange that countries which are not necessarily football orientated, and we're fully aware with the Cricket World Cup taking place at present, and India very much the firm favourites to win it. Football's sizable in India, but compared to cricket, it's a small sport. So I agree with you, and I agree with John that the present system is open to abuse. If you take a look at the 211 members of FIFA, from the World Cup, every country gets an annual payment, an equal amount of money. The participating nations do get more money. And if we take a country such as Aruba, which I think is currently ranked 206th out of the 211 members, and you can tell I've been on Google this morning, Aruba, which I didn't even know existed. I think I've now got a desire to go on holiday to Aruba, because it does actually sound quite a nice place. Aruba is a full FIFA member, as is Gibraltar, as is the British Virgin Islands, but Aruba has a population of 106,000 people. Should that have the same voting rights as India or China, or even countries such as Germany and Argentina, which have won the World Cup on many occasions, I think there is a question mark. And the likes of Infantino and Blatter have been very keen to talk to the likes of Aruba and Gibraltar and the British Virgin Islands and the Turks and Caicos Islands, and treat them as equals because they've got an equal number of votes. And those countries would not get the benefits of FIFA's money were it not for Infantino. So therefore, you can understand why they vote for him. It's politics. Trying to work out a system which is for the benefit of football as a whole, I think would prove to be very difficult, because there will always be winners and losers, regardless of the way that the votes were organised.
Aruba, Kieran, has, as you can see, I'm grinning at the moment, Aruba is one of the few countries in the world that it is impossible to say without grinning. It's just Aruba. It's great. Mel Smith was one of the nicest people you could meet.
Good.
He was delightful, Mel. But I've never met a man who needed less excuse to not work than Mel. For Mel, working really did get in the way of enjoying himself. There's so many stories about Mel. There's one in particular where he was coming back from Sandown with a couple of friends, and his horse had won, and he was on the train, and the refreshment trolley came round with various alcoholic drinks on it, and the refreshment lady asked Mel if he would like anything from the trolley. He said, "Yes, I'd like the trolley, please," and he bought the entire trolley, basically, and then proceeded to wheel the trolley up and down the train, giving away the drinks on the trolley. He was a remarkable man, and you've never met two different people than Mel and Griff. They're incredible. I again, like Aruba, I can't mention Mel's name without smiling. Dominic Cammerman has our next question. And Dominic says, around Valentine's Day this year, Napoli played in a specific Valentine's Day shirt. Could we see something similar in the Premier League or Champions League, or do they forbid such one-off shirts?
Well, once again, I would say to Dominic, I think, first of all, this is a good idea. Ultimately, we talk about the Premier League as if it has its own mind. It doesn't. What it would need is 14 votes. And you have to, with a 2/3 majority, you can have anything that you so desire within the Premier League, including setting up and joining a Super League, which is perhaps why we need an independent regulator. But with regards to this, clubs are presently allowed to have one match a season where they use a different sponsor, as far as the Premier League is concerned. With regards to shirts, there is nothing to stop a one-off shirt, because we've also seen, and here I'm holding up my colourblind hat, where in the sense that you might have to have a one-off shirt because there are clashes. I remember when Palace played Brighton in 2005 at Selhurst, the guy that was in charge of Brighton at the time thought it was quite a good idea to have 3 kits, all of which involved blue, which even I thought it seemed a bit strange. So therefore they had to have a one-off kit created for that match, which was an all-white kit, because clearly Palace were playing in blue and red stripes. So it can take place. With regards to UEFA and the Champions League, where there's a will, there's a way. But I don't see this being too much of a problem, although UEFA can be a bit sniffy, as we've seen in relation to their objection to the Bob Marley reference on the back of Ajax shirts a couple of seasons ago.
So I'm all for this idea, Kieran. I coming up to my favourite time of year, I'd love to see Palace play in the football equivalent of a Christmas jumper. I'd love to see Dominic. I'd love to see Jordan Ayew with a couple of massive reindeer on each side. That'd be great. And maybe a little light up one as well at half time as it's getting dark. Just Eberechi Eze with little flashing lights going across his Christmas sleigh. That's a great idea. Matt Holly. Oh, there you go. What? Look at that, Kieran.
Wow.
Well, it couldn't be better, could it?
Vote for us, with links like this.
Wow, wait till they get to the question from Tommy Tinsel coming up. Matt, please promise me, Matt, if you were called Matt Holly and you had a child, a daughter, you'd have to call it Ivy Holly. Wow, that'd be a great name. I wanted to call my son Zippity Doodah, because I thought Zippity Doodah Day would be a brilliant name. I got outvoted 1-1, which is what
I know that feeling.
Matt Holly says, if the Newcastle owners brought £1 billion of Newcastle shares and the club invested the £1 billion, would the income from the investments count towards FFP? I think this is a really interesting question, Kieran.
Cool. This is a corker.
Just.
Under present legislation, I think they probably could. Because if we take a look at the accounts of clubs, some of them do have investment income, and that's included in profit before tax. And profit before tax is the initial point through which the profitability and sustainability calculations are drawn. I suspect there would be a response from other clubs. And once again, if 14 clubs vote to change the rules, they could say there is an automatic cap on investment income being included. But under the present rules, I think Matt's got a nice little one here. But there would be an instant response from other Premier League owners. And remember, there are Premier League meetings which take place on a monthly basis. I suspect we could be moving into a very interesting time in January with talk about Newcastle potentially loaning players from the Saudi Pro League to Newcastle for the second half of the season. And Newcastle are they're flying at present. They're playing good football with the current squad, but Ronaldo, Benzema, if he hadn't wrecked his knee, Neymar and co. There's some good players as well, and it'll be a shorter distance for Jordan Henderson to pop home, because he's still left his rainbow laces in Cheshire, and they're waiting for him to collect them. So that'll be benefit for him as well.
Jeff Sullivan. That shouldn't be the hardest name to pronounce, should it? Jeff Sullivan. I mean, I have trouble with some of the consonantal names, Kieran, which I'll try to pronounce correctly, but it didn't even occur to me to think about pronouncing Jeff Sullivan correctly. I apologise, Jeff. Jeff has our penultimate question, and it's a subject that does perplex a lot of football fans here, Kieran. Jeff says, I have a couple of questions about the NFL games at Spurs. How much are Spurs paid for hosting these games, and who pays that money? Is it the teams that take part in them? Is it the NFL, or a combination of the two? And would the Premier League consider moving a game to the US or anywhere else for that matter?
If you've got a can of worms, consider it opened. Spurs have a contract with the NFL, not with individual teams, and that is to host 2 games a season. This is part of the NFL's desire to globalise interest in the sport. Those matches are spectacularly sold out. The ticket prices are high. I believe Spurs get a hosting fee in the region of £1 million per match, plus they have similar income coming from catering. We've spoken before. Spurs have got a lot of things right in relation to the new White Hart Lane. One of which is if you take a look at their commercial income, which will include. So we've not seen the specific contract. Ultimately, it's a private contract, but I think these rumours are reasonably fair. Spurs have trebled their commercial income since moving to the new White Hart Lane. And then now, they were in around about 50 million, 60 million. Now it's about 180. So they've done extremely well with regards to the new stadium. As far as the Premier League consider moving a match to the US or anywhere else, everything's up for grabs. Once again, it comes down to you need 14 votes. And we recall a decade ago or so when one of the things that was discussed at the Premier League meeting was the legendary 39th game, where there would be a series of fixtures where the Premier League would effectively take itself overseas, with a view to increasing the interest in the game. I'm sure players and coaches will be, if that had come through, as well as fans, because I think there's an article in the Liverpool Echo or the Athletic about a Liverpool fan from Norway who's travelled to 1,000 consecutive games from Norway, home and away, which is a hell of an achievement. So fans do go to all lengths to see their team. You can understand some diehard fans of individual clubs would be aghast at this, but it could certainly happen. Everything is on the table until it's taken off the table. With regards to the increased monetisation of football.
Yeah, for Match of the Day 2, Kieran, I travelled from Oslo to Liverpool with a plane load of Norwegian Liverpool fans. The plane took off at 11 o'clock at night. I've been involved in some sessions in my time, Kieran, but I can only use the word carnage for this one. I've never been in a situation where I'm the only sober person in any room, let alone any airplane. But I'm
a bit concerned about the pilot there, Kevin.
The pilot had his door locked, Kieran. He just has a massive padlock on the door. But we arranged to go back the next morning to meet these Norwegian Liverpool fans in the city centre pub, quite a well-known city centre pub, at 11 o'clock, and we got there at 10:30. And the doorman said, they're barred. We had to throw them out at half past 10. They'd been thrown out. It was an astonishing. I mean, they were the nicest blokes you ever. My God, yes. No wonder those monasteries didn't have a chance, Kieran. Those 10th century monasteries in the northeast coast. Our last question, Kieran, comes from Sam Brake. Sam, if you're listening to this, I hope you are. I have to congratulate you, Sam, because I don't think the most intelligent of the artificially intelligent robots that are going to rise up and rule the world, Kieran, as we've discovered this week, I don't think the most intelligent AI could come up with a question that suits Kieran Maguire better than this one. This is the question that he's been waiting to answer all his life. So well done, Sam. Sam says, with the Premier League now spending ridiculous amounts on player transfer fees and wages, what is the average cost per goal in the league, and which clubs are getting the best/worst bang for their buck?
Right. This this question actually caused me to be late for the podcast for the first time, because I'm one of those. I would rather be 3 hours early than 1 minute late. Yeah, I'm sort of. I've got many foibles, of which timeliness is one of them. So I set up to work on this, and it caused, I don't know what happened, but it caused my spreadsheet to crash, and I was practically in tears this morning.
Oh my God! I know.
I put 12 years worth of work into this one spreadsheet, and it wasn't actually caused by these numbers, but it was caused by something else which had been lurking in the background. And so that's why I had to do a big repair job this morning. With regards to this, and it's an absolute corker. Thank you, Sam. It's not the 25th of December, but for me, it's the closest that I could ever get to it, as far as the podcast is concerned. So, with regards to the figures, as in terms of the Premier League, the winners in the Premier League would be, and congratulations to Brentford Football Club. Okay. In terms of wages, it cost them £1.42 million per goal. Bottom of the Premier League by quite a long way in 21-22, which is the last year we have figures for, is Manchester United. And people say, well, hold on, it would be Manchester United, wouldn't it? Because they've got the biggest wage bill. But Manchester City were actually, I think, about fifth or sixth in the table. Second bottom were Norwich. Norwich had one of the smaller wage bills, but they didn't score many goals. And you'll be delighted to know, Kevin, that Crystal Palace are in the Champions League places.
Get out of it.
In terms of bang per buck in relation to wages. They came a very creditable fourth. So,
well, I can only deduce from that, Kieran, that our wage bill must be really, really low, because we definitely don't score many goals. Fourth we came, did we? Mm. That's interesting. Where were Brighton in this?
Brighton were eighth. This is for 21-22.
Yeah, no, I'll take that, Kieran. Let's not. Yeah, yes, you and my dad would have gotten very well, because he was the amount of times I would take him to Gatwick Airport to go to Ireland and say, Dad, why are we here 7 hours before the flight takes off? Well, it's like, you don't want to take the risk, son, do you? And it's like, whereas Ed's worked out that it takes 1 minute and 7 seconds to get from our house to Norbury Station, and that's how much he leaves himself to get from our house. And much as I try, and you know this, Kieran, because every time I log on, Kieran's there patiently waiting for me. I do really try. I really, really try. I mean, I was up at 8 o'clock this morning, and I was still 3 minutes late. I just can't. I try hard, Kieran. I just I'm just 1 minute behind the rest of the world, just in general. Thank you to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page, including Will Bryan, Darren Murray, Tommy, Aidan Buttimer, Matt Riley, Romeo, and Stuart. I don't know if they're an item, Kieran, but I just like reading out the words Romeo and Stuart. If you'd like to make a small monthly contribution to the pod as well, that would be very kind of you, and it gets you access to our chat community and our regular quizzes, and you can do that by going to patreon.com/priceoffootball. If you're listening to this show on Monday, then tomorrow night, Tuesday, we will be on the island of Jersey, the Royal Yacht. So that's November the 7th. You've probably left it a bit late to book flights and tickets now, but you can do so by going to priceoffootball.com. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, you can email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. And if you'd like to buy our latest book or one of our other books, or get yourself a Price of Football t-shirt, you can find details on the same website, priceoffootball.com. We'll be back on Thursday with our regular news pod. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to... No, Finlay, you've timed that really badly. Daddy's not... He hears me going, he's just said priceoffootball.com 10 times. It must be nearly over. But he just got it wrong. So in the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Yeah, and we're really looking forward to coming to Jersey, and we hope you're all, you've all, as well as you can be, following the Gales. I know you were hit particularly badly. We're looking forward to the show, and we're also looking forward very much to coming to Dulwich Hamlet on Thursday the 16th of November. Strictly, that is a sort of a quasi-book launch show, but I suspect we'll get a bit distracted and we might have 3 or 4 stories arising which we'll cover. And of course, anybody that comes up, if you've got questions, we've got answers. They won't necessarily match your questions, but we've got answers for everything. Normally, I always go to the default of amortization if I'm not sure about something. There's other ways that you can support the show, and that's to give us a review using your app, and also to give us a review for the book. Yeah, that'd be nice as well. Yeah. And it doesn't matter what you say as far as the apps are concerned. It helps us in the tables. You could even say you would rather the show presented by all accounts, 2 of the nicest people the world's known, in the shape of Rick Astley and Mel Smith, and God bless both of them. They are an absolute credit to the world.
Yeah, the trouble is, Kieran, that I would love to see that happen, but it'd be a really short pod, because Mel wouldn't have got to the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game without, he would have just looked at his watch and just raise an eyebrow at Rick, and then he'd be in the Wetherspoons in Norbury. And Rick Astley would probably have to cancel his next 2 gigs. Bye, everybody. Vote for the price of football.
The price of football. The price of football.